9:14 p.m., 2024. Just got done reading the second act of The Night of the Iguana, and I'm really liking this play. I think it's really good so far, and I've enjoyed. Somehow, I pivoted to Tennessee Williams's works, and let's see, what have I read so far? I've read Suddenly Last Summer, Sweet Bird of Youth, Period of Adjustment, and now Night of the Iguana. And one thing that keeps happening, I keep Googling, does this play have racial slurs in it? And they're like, no. So then I'll start reading it, and then he'll start dropping these slurs, and it's like, okay. So I tried to check beforehand, and it just, I don't know. I do not like substituting, but I'm not gonna bust out N-bombs. So, and since I'm reading an author whose work is predominantly featured in the South, and he's writing what he saw and experienced, there's going to be slurs. And it's like, god damn, that gets old. But Suddenly Last Summer, I enjoy mightily. I enjoy the play. I enjoy the film adaptation. Love it. Sweet Bird of Youth, I gotta be honest, I was a little bit disappointed with it. I went ahead and watched the film adaptation with Paul Newman and Begley, Ed Begley Sr., and I forget who else. Oh, Rip Torn, a young Rip Torn, which honestly, that was kind of the most amusing part of it. Anytime he was on the screen, I thought, oh my god, that's Rip Torn. Before I knew, what I know him as he looked like was when he looked like in my time frame, not when he was young. He's very handsome. Fucked up but handsome. Paul Newman's obviously gorgeous, but Rip Torn ain't no slouch either. Period of Adjustment, I liked better than The Sweet Bird of Youth, except for the ending. I really didn't like the ending where it's like, let's see, what was it I hated about it? Or not liked about it. 327. Something about, oh, you're home or something. Let's see. Said you told them that I was homely. Did you say that, Ralph, that I was homely? Dottie, you used to be homely, but you improved in appearance. You never told me you thought I was homely. I just meant that you had an offbeat kind of a face, honey, but the rest of you is attractive. And it's like, I always knew I was homely, but you were good looking enough to make up for it, baby. And it's like, okay. I guess the characters are cool with it, but I'm not sure I really like that ending. I love the play. I very much enjoyed the play. And I always say maybe I'm missing something, but I didn't like that exchange near the end. And I did not like Sweet Bird of Youth. I just I don't know. Either I just didn't like it as much as the other ones, or I just didn't click with it. The Night of the Iguana, I remember reading this was a short story, I think, which is much more graphic than this play is, unless it gets graphic in the third act or the third scene or whatever, third act. But I'm enjoying it so far. Tennessee does not shy away from themes of rape, sodomy, incest, cannibalism, anything and everything but the kitchen sink and the kitchen sink. Which, hey, these are elements that we live amongst and some of us engage in and all of us are affected by. So, it's not that shocking to see. and neither is the racial slurs necessarily. But God, I get tired of seeing them. Like, I get it, but it's also like enough's enough. But I also wanted to talk about well, first of all, what other things have I read lately that I was gonna say something about? View your channel. Let's see. No, I think that was it. I also hate breaking up the cleanliness of like the posts. Like, I'm gonna post this ramble, then I'm gonna post the third act, and that'll break up how nice everything looks. But I don't know. I just kind of wanted to talk for a little while because also I wanted to talk about a documentary I watched twice called now I gotta look it up. Let's see. Happy Joy Joy, the Ren and Stimpy story. Okay. So there's this documentary called Happy Joy Joy, the Ren and Stimpy story that essentially outlines the entire conception, genesis, evolution, rise and fall of Ren and Stimpy. I watched Nickelodeon religiously as a child. I'm gonna say, growing up in the 90s, if ever there was a proof that God existed, and this was proof of it, I would believe it. Being a kid in the 90s was amazing. I would never trade it for anything. It may very well be one of the high times of my life, and if it is, I kind of half accept it. And watching Nickelodeon during that time was a complete and utter joy. Although Ren and Stimpy kind of antedates a lot of the shows I loved, like Are You Afraid of the Dark? What Would You Do? Hey Dude, Salute Your Shorts, Adventures of Pete and Pete. Some of them are the same time frame, like Rocko's Modern Life, Rugrats, and many more that I can't grab at the moment. Ren and Stimpy was right there in it, and I gotta say, Ren and Stimpy came out in the early 90s, and I remember it. I was very young. I existed though, and I watched it. I loved it. I thought it was hysterical. My mom hated it, and she was right for it because it was completely inappropriate for kids, over the top. The innuendos weren't even innuendos. They were just pretty blatant. Whatever the censors would allow would essentially make it on TV. And hearing the people they grabbed to talk about their affection for Ren and Stimpy, I like Bobby Lee and Jack Black and and I forget her name. But the creators, also the creators of the show and what it meant to them, they were right. It was, if you were to ask me what I think of Ren and Stimpy now, when I look back on it, what would I say? What do I think of Ren and Stimpy? I think it's brilliant. I think the show was fantastic. The animation, I think, still isn't really appreciated. For what it is, and the voice acting and the direction, everything in it is brilliant. And I think this documentary that discusses the timeline and the whole story of it tells it really well. It was a bunch of people that a bunch of talented artists that got together, and after a kind of failed pitch to where a studio executive didn't like one concept but liked the third concept within one of the within one of the IPs, one of the intellectual properties. They wanted something done with the cat and mouse, or the cat and dog. And the head of the whole thing is a guy named John Kricfalusi. When I say this, it is so devastating to grow up with something, grow up with somebody's work, somebody who you love and admire and think the world of, and then learn about who they really are. It's devastating. It is absolutely devastating. I've been through it with several people, almost to the point where I'm almost starting to think of looking up to nobody, because I'm not going to say nearly everybody I've ever loved is a horrible person, but like almost too many to count now. And it's like, I realize that human beings are imperfect, they're fallible, they're mortal, they're a mess, they're capable of mistakes. Okay, that's one thing. It's a completely other thing if the human being is like a covert pedophile, a sadist, a tyrant, somebody that's kind of unapologetic about their actions and their predation. And I will say that John Kricfalusi is in this documentary. He has the balls to be in it and at least semi-admit his wrongdoing. But he does the thing where he makes like a non-apology. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry if they were hurt. And it's like, dude, you were in a quote-unquote relationship with like a 15-year-old, and she went there to be under your tutelage, and you like molested and raped her, and it wasn't just one girl, it was two girls. One of them had to abort his baby, and it's like, dude. And they admit, like in the documentary, and in other interviews I've seen him in, that it's very clear a lot of this is tied to his upbringing. And I keep running into this with these people that, and not always people that I like, not idolize, but looked up to for their talent and their genuine like skill and like artistry that I think was amazing and impacted me as a human being. I keep running into this that like, okay, they went through some shit when they were a kid, but there had to be a point where they had to ask themselves, okay, I'm fucked up. What am I going to do about it? And then it's like, do they ever get to that point? Or do they know they're fucked up, but they don't do anything about it? Do they not know they're fucked up and just live their fucked up lives like normal, and that's what they know is normal? Or do they live their fucked up lives and think everybody else is fucked up for not, seeing what they see as normal and just shun everybody else out, and on and on and on and on and on. And I think just from hearing his like non-apology, I think he knows like he was wrong, but I don't think he's sorry for it at all. And I did look up to John and his artistry and his genius. I do think the guy's a genius, but I think he's extremely fucked up. And that doesn't always have to go hand in hand. It's not, whenever you hear or read of a person, like someone that's extremely creative being fucked up, it's not surprising anymore. But I don't think it has to be a prerequisite. I think John, like he said, he developed a passion for cartoons and comics when he was a kid and just never stopped. He kept drawing and developed, what he wanted to see in cartoons, which was Ren and Stimpy, which was amazing. Like, his artistry is a big part of my childhood. Like, I watched, I think, Troop Beverly Hills before the film starts, and its credit sequence has by him. Björk, whom I love, her music video, I Miss You, is completely his animation. Commercials I used to watch had his like Nike, I think, and other things, other Nickelodeon things had his animation, which was and is brilliant. His animation is amazing. It's also like hard to appreciate it because of what I know about him. And it's that whole how do you separate the art and the artist? And it's like, I don't think I can anymore. I do with some people, and that's hypocritical of me, but it's getting harder and harder to justify liking somebody's work, knowing who they are as a person. I don't understand how people can just blindly enjoy something when they know somebody has committed heinous acts. Like, I don't think it was in this document. I might be mistaken. I watched this stuff at like 3 in the morning, and then I forget what all was involved with it. But in one of the interviews, either in this documentary or in another like interview or video essay, they talk about how his relationship with his father and how like domineering his father could be, how his father didn't express emotion, and when he did, it bubbled over, it boiled over. When it came time for his father to teach him about sex, he like, I think he tried to get rid of his comic books in his closet and put a bunch of Playboys in there, and then just never said anything. And then it's like, how do you expect a kid to have a healthy relationship with like sex and women and learning about reproduction if you don't talk to him about it? If you don't explain things, you can't just put porn in like an adolescent's bedroom and just hope everything magically turns out to be okay. And it's like, that's just one thing that happened. I don't know how his dad treated his mom, but like, and how much of that is linked to his, deviancy. And it was heartbreaking hearing the executive talk about John's pseudo decline. Like, he was trying to push the envelope with Ren and Stimpy, and he did. He did, and it was amazing. But some of the things he did was pushing on the line of like explicit and blue, and like, it's like, dude, it's a kid's cartoon. You can have boogers and farts and butts and like, all the kid stuff. But when you start pushing like sex stuff in it, you're really crossing the line. And it's like, if that's where you want to go with your artistry, like, a kid's network ain't it. And then when he tried to do it in an adult setting, it failed spectacularly. Because I don't think people wanted to see Ren and Stimpy in a perverse way. It's already perverse in the sense that these are outrageous characters doing outrageous things, but there's an innocence to it that's like filtered through with it, which is why they're so beloved. They're a cat and dog. They're not porn stars. There's nothing inherently sexually deviant about them except whatever concepts they find themselves in that John has put them in. I think I still have like a Stimpy doll. But I remember that was one of the shows I used to watch with my siblings, and we used to bond over it. And we didn't really bond over a lot of things, but like Ren and Stimpy was one of those absurdist cartoons that like it was so not kid appropriate, but we watched it anyways, that my siblings and I, who didn't have any common ground, had a common ground in enjoying something that we were watching together. And it was over the like, and that also developed my appreciation for the over the topness that you can go with storytelling. I've since gravitated towards movies and shows that have no problem, that are limitless in terms of their willingness to go to like the edges of the parameters and over them in terms of going over the top and with a story and still making it relatable, still making it humorous, and still making it have meaning to it. And when you see that in animation, you know, that can go to places that comedy and tragedy might not have ever gone before because nobody's tried it. Because they're going to places nobody's been before. And in terms of animation, I think that's what John did. And it's like, you can't take that away from him. However, it's really hard to look up to him when you know he's committed these acts. Like, I empathize with him that he had a somewhat fucked up childhood, but I don't empathize with the fact that he transcended this pain onto other people. And it's like, we're at a time in history where we've seen this pattern over and over and over and over again. Somebody is affected by what's happened to them when they're young. Okay. They either hold that inside and it manifests in many different ways as they evolve as people. And they either address it or, and either way, it's going to come out of them in some way that's going to affect themselves and other people. I think no matter what you go through in childhood, what you go through that shapes you during the formative years, it'll come out and manifest itself in different ways that will affect other people. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a fucked up childhood. But I think especially when you have a messed up childhood and it affects the individual and their growth and their perception and their expression of things, it's going to come out sooner or later. So I mourn the fact that somebody that can create something as wonderful and brilliant as Ren and Stimpy. Yeah, I mean, and it's a kid's cartoon, but it's an expression of artistry that I had never seen before or since. Comes from a person that's, I don't think is ever truly gonna I don't want to say faces demons, but like fully outright address how he came to be. Like in the documentary, they do talk about it. It's documentary addresses many different things. It addresses the evolution of Ren and Stimpy, which is awesome, but it also addresses the evolution a little bit of John Kricfalusi and how they go hand in hand with the success of the show. And that's kind of fucked up to think about how like his fucked upness did contribute to the success, because the expression was so out there, but it's also like that letting that out of him, even though it gave joy to a lot of people, it hurt a lot of people. And then you have to ask yourself the question, was it all worth it? And it's hard. It's hard. As somebody who loved the show then, and I still I watched a little bit of the show last night. I still say it's brilliant. Who still enjoys the show now enjoys it for what it was. It's hard. The people on the team talked about how it's like forever shit stained now. It's tainted by John's legacy. The legacy of Ren and Stimpy is tainted by John. And the juggernaut of the success of it that was created by him and propelled by him came down twice as hard with his defying authority and his ascension of power, like trying to tell network executives that he'll do whatever the fuck he wants to do. And it's like, okay, but they're not going to broadcast it. So it's a very, very interesting documentary. If you're into Ren and Stimpy or child's programming or cartoons, I recommend it. But it's utterly depressing. And it reminded me of Crumb. And Crumb is an excellent documentary that talks about Robert Crumb's and all the Crumb brothers' childhood, with how they grew up with their father, their tyrant father, and their amphetamine addicted mother, and how that fucked them all up. And it's like, oh my God. And their outlet towards emotional expression was comic books and drawing. Something has to give. Something has to bust open. Even if what busts open is toxic, I do think there's a kind of self-medicating element to it, a kind of self-soothing to it. It's an outward expression of something that's been kept inward a very, very long time. So, it's devastating to learn, what John Kricfalusi did. And I don't think he's sorry for it. I think he's angry that it cost him his career and pretty much tore down his legacy, but he's the one that created it. And it goes back to that adage of you're not responsible for what caused your mental illness, but you're responsible how to handle it. I'm butchering the idiom, but you're essentially responsible in handling yourself. And I think a lot of people just outright fail handling themselves. I fail handling myself a lot, but I don't do what John did, nor would I ever. And I don't think people with problems like these, or people like these, their first inclination is to get help, because then you'd have to admit you have a problem. And I think that's one of the biggest things to overcome is admitting that you have a problem. Because if you admit you have a problem, that admits you did a lot of wrongdoing. And I think a lot of people won't let themselves get to that point or address that point, especially if it's something devastating to other people. And when they don't do that, nothing is resolved. And the pain goes on. I think it would go on regardless, but there's no attempt at resolving things. I do think it's really hard for people to admit that they've done wrong. and then like enter into a space where they talk to the people about the wrong they've done. Like, I can think of a person right now that if I were to go up to them and be like, look, I was an asshole to you when we were kids, and it was wrong, and I'm sorry. I think I would, but I'm not gonna go on their doorstep and knock on their door and like, wait for them to come to the door and be like, hey, so and so, I was an ass. I'm not gonna do that. It's just weird. If for whatever reason we cross paths again, and I can talk to them and be like, you know what, I was a royal asshole when we were kids, and what I did was wrong, and I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Yeah, I would do it. Because I carry that, and I hope they don't carry that, but they might, and it's like, to know that you're the cause of like somebody else's pain is fucking awful. I realize that's a big part of like being a human being. That's something you really can't escape from. I think everybody does it. I think everybody does it unintentionally, but there's like varying degrees to which people do it. And there's certain times in people's lives where they know they're doing it, and they don't do anything about it. I don't know. Everybody's guilty of it. But John Kricfalusi, a very naturally brilliant, skilled artist, but a completely messed up individual. I feel for him, but I feel for people he affected more, And that's it. I mean, there's nothing really more to say or do on this subject. He created a brilliant show. The people that were behind that show, in the documentary, they interview a lot of people involved with the show and the creation. It wasn't just John. It was like a team of people that helped create Ren and Stimpy and make it for what it was, and made it into this beautiful, amazing cartoon that has touched many lives, has touched my life deeply. They created something amazing, and you don't ever want to take that away. You don't want to let one person take away from many people's work. And it kind of does. It doesn't altogether, but that it does enough just to kind of like sully it sucks. But I loved Ren and Stimpy growing up. I still love it. I still think it's fantastic. I think the animation, the art direction, the voice acting is brilliant. I think it's brilliant, and I think it was a brilliant show. And kind of like the cherry on top was, I think David Silverman was in the documentary kind of praising it. And The Simpsons and Ren and Stimpy had kind of an ongoing feud, and to see an original Simpson, I forget what his title was in the show, a storyboard editor or something pretty prestigious. I'm sorry, David. Somebody that essentially knows how to make a cartoon and how to run it and show it. For him to praise Ren and Stimpy, that's big. That's big. And I agree with him. And I agree with everybody that praised it. Praised it and praises it. It's a brilliant show. And I think I'll always love it and appreciate it, even with like the stain of what John's done. So, I feel for John's victims and hope they're doing well, and don't know what the hell John's doing, and I would hope he'd eventually get help, but I don't know. I don't think that's gonna happen. But it's a good documentary. Again, I recommend it. It's depressing, but it's one I watched it once, like, a few weeks ago, and then I watched it again last night, and I think I didn't finish it, but I might click it on after this. It's Happy Happy Joy Joy, the Ren and Stimpy story, and it gives the rise and fall of Ren and Stimpy, essentially, and it's fascinating. If you can get past the depressing part of it, it's fascinating and very interesting to see how all, like, the magic comes together. And that's also a special part of it too, is like, if you're lucky, there are times in your life where, like, for whatever reason, without explanation, all these little things come together at, like, the right time, the right place, and something extraordinary happens. And I think that's what happened with Ren and Stimpy. All these talented people, every one of them with their different skill sets, although they had no money, but they had a natural gifts. They came together and they made something amazing. And the world got to see it. And that was amazing. I think if you're lucky and you get to experience that, I think it's wonderful. I think people look for that, and it's just one of those serendipitous things that it just happens sometimes. And to be able to get to see that, like, I don't know if I'll ever necessarily experience that. I have, on, like, a different kind of level, not like a super juggernaut level, but I have experienced serendipitous things with groups of people and individuals. But something like that, to have a hit TV show and, like, you love it and the people love it, and, like, it's a great thing for a while. I can't imagine what that must feel like. It must be amazing. But you also know that it's, like, it's fleeting, and, like, the clock is ticking, and it'll exist for a while, and when it exists, it'll be great. But you want it to always be great. And with Ren and Stimpy, it is great. It is. But there's just this sad undertone of, like, what the creator's actions have, like, blighted on the show. I don't know. It's sad, but interesting nonetheless. And again, I recommend it. I recommend it and Crumb. Crumb is fantastic. I think I've seen that documentary easily 10 times. These kind of topics never fail to fascinate me, and I think that's it. I'll try to finish Night of the Iguana, I don't know, soon. And I remember reading the short story, I think, or something that felt very similar to it. It's been obviously years since I've read it, but I forget the ending. I try not to look at any synopsis until I'm done reading. But this one's pretty good so far. And again, I did like Period of Adjustment. I loved the concept of it. Not sure I enjoyed the ending, but Suddenly Last Summer is brilliant. Sweet Bird of Youth is... I think I misunderstood that one. I might have to go back and check it. But that's it for now. I think that's all I have to say. Let's see, 9:54 p.m., 11/8/2024. If you're listening, thanks for listening. Yeah, I think that's it. Love ya. Thanks.